Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending Advocacy and Action to learn what's been working in West Virginia. And while we're waiting for Jennifer to be able to log in, we have Sheila Moran and Maricel Bernardo who work on the problem gambling in West Virginia, and they will go ahead and start this session. I hope everybody learns lots. And I'm going to end the poll just so that people can see their faces and we can get started. So anybody, Sheila, if you want to go ahead and start with your presentation and take it away. And if you can't share your screen, please let me know.
I should be able to see. Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you for having us present. Thank you, Anne, for having us present. I am Sheila Moran. I'm the marketing director for the Problem Gambling Help Network of West Virginia. I'm joined by Maricel Bernardo, who is our prevention coordinator, and Jennifer Davis Walton is getting on shortly. She is our program director. So this presentation is based off of a presentation that we did for the Community Service Board Conference in Chantilly a while back. It has a lot of information on gambling in general, prevention and treatment, but I understand you all are primarily prevention based. So I am really going to fly through a lot of the information that deals with treatment, since I think you all don't do treatment, and I will try not to. The presentation we did in Chantilly was longer, so I will probably fly through a few of these slides, but it is all available to you all afterwards, and definitely will save 5 or 10 minutes towards the end for any questions that you all have. I have been with the Problem Gambling Network for, over 20 years now, so a very long time, and I've seen a lot of changes come and go in the field, and so it's really exciting for me to be able to talk to you all about some of the things we've seen, some of the things that have worked for us, and some of the things that have not worked for us. So today, mainly what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about what we have seen specifically with relating to gambling prevention and with youth gambling, and to give you some ideas for what might work to keep ahead of the game, so to speak. Again, I know a lot of you know much about gambling, so I won't belabor this or go over all of the symptoms. I'm sure most of you know problem gambling is a continuation of gambling behavior despite serious negative consequences. You will encounter people in the community, and maybe you already have, who don't understand this and want to quantify it in terms of, I only spend this amount of money on gambling, or, well, I spend this amount, but I make this much money. And so they really want to, sort of the way someone who's addicted to alcohol might say, well, if I only drink this much, how can it be a problem? Well, if you've got DUIs and your spouse is leaving you because of it, doesn't really matter how much specifically you're drinking. So very similar with gambling. And that might be a challenge you find in talking to people in the community to get them to really understand this definition. Gambling is very severe. This is another issue we find. We do a lot of exhibits on programs, and I'm sorry, I should take a step back and tell you, in addition to the Problem Gambling Help Network of West Virginia, our company, First Choice Services, has 15 other helplines, including the suicide line, addiction line, mental health line, tobacco. And so what we often do is exhibits on all of these things together. And what we find is people will look at most of the issues we have, suicide, addiction, and say, wow, it's a big problem. I know someone with that problem. It's so bad. But still we'll get some people who don't understand the severity of gambling. They'll say, well, haha, I'm going to take this brochure and give it to my wife who goes to the casino sometimes, and just doesn't quite understand how serious this disorder can be. And it can be serious, and I'm sure you're seeing this, have seen it, will see it in Virginia. This is just a headline from someone here in West Virginia. who embezzled $70,000, and we hear this constantly. Anytime, in fact, I see something in the newspaper where someone has embezzled, particularly from some sort of a nonprofit organization, and it was formerly a very upstanding person, the type of person that everybody says, can't believe they would have done that. I'm always thinking in the back of my head, was it gambling? Because we've heard that so often on the helpline. Gambling, very popular and getting more popular, to say the least. That has been a huge change in the last 20 years. Throughout the United States, we have tremendously expanded every type of gambling. I won't belabor this. You all probably are well aware that online gambling, that's where it's at. It used to be casino gambling. People would drive to the casino for a night out. And then it was, well, I'm going to drive to a mini casino. We have those here, and I know you all now have those there. And now everything is on the phone, so it is really easy to access. I had a little bit of information in my last presentation about West Virginia versus Virginia. Basically, this is just a disclaimer telling you that I understand that we're really two pretty completely different states in a lot of ways. So there may be things that I'm telling you that may not completely translate to Virginia. Certainly you all are a lot bigger than us, and you have a lot more people than us. My gosh, a whole lot more people. So keeping that in mind, as I talk about our prevention efforts, you're going to hopefully have a lot more funds and people to put towards this, because it's going to be a lot more difficult for you all to reach that level of people. So, again, as I'm saying, what we're doing, think in your mind, you need to multiply it by this much to reach all of the people in Virginia. A little bit differences just in our general demographics of people. We are not as racially diverse. Our little bit of difference in education. I talked a little bit about crime in the last presentation. I won't really belabor that. Probably you've heard that sometimes gambling addiction can lead to crime. We definitely see that. We hear people say that on the helpline quite a bit. Economy is different. I hate to say this, I guess your economy is a little bit better than us, to say the least. I think you're seventh highest, we're fourth lowest. So
would you, Sheila, would you mind just giving them a little information, like what types of crimes?
I'm sorry. Yeah. So the different types of crime, I would say, years ago, some of you young people may be wondering what I mean by bad check or bounce check, but we get a lot of those calls. In fact, what has happened a lot where we're at is that people would go into our video lottery terminal parlors and ask them to hold a check, like, okay, I'm going to give you a check for $1,000, but please don't cash this until tomorrow, thinking they're going to win. In fact, it got so prevalent that our prosecuting attorneys in the state said they would no longer prosecute that crime, because people really should not be accepting those checks. Another thing that we hear is stealing from friends or family, which is often not reported. Stealing from employers, stealing from nonprofit organizations, where someone's like the treasurer of the Boy Scout Association or the Neighborhood Community Association, things like that. We hear quite a lot. I would say, there is some evidence of increases in other different crimes like domestic violence associated with gambling addiction. So there can be all kinds, but I would say property types certainly would be most prevalent. Let's see, sorry, I'm just speeding through this because we don't have time for all of it. Do you know what types of gambling are available in West Virginia or in Virginia? So in West Virginia, we have, believe it or not, more gambling per capita than most other states, and really, I think still significantly more than Virginia. The story that we tell, we also answer the Virginia Council on Problem Gambling Helpline. And when we first took that line, it was like, oh, well, this isn't going to be pretty easy because West Virginia has all this gambling and Virginia doesn't have that much. And pretty soon after taking that, and right around the era of COVID, Virginia started dramatically expanding the types of gambling that we have. So in West Virginia, we have 5 casinos. We have video poker parlors. We have about 1,200 of those, which are little shops with 5 to 10 slot machines, and we have mobile sports gambling and mobile online gambling and bingo and lottery tickets and pretty much everything you can think of. So in Virginia, I don't know how familiar you all are, probably more familiar with me than them, the different types of gambling that are available in Virginia. Jennifer, are you on here yet? Is Jennifer on here? No, she'll make it okay.
Yeah, she's on here.
Jen, did you want to say anything about the evolution of gambling in Virginia with this timeline? I don't hear her. Okay, so
I have a delay, so I'm not talking or doing my video. I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I'm having major technical issues.
that's fine. So you can look at this chart, and here's what I want you to see. Do you see the big gap? Okay, so West Virginia has been pretty consistently adding different types of gambling for a number of years, and there was a pretty big gap in here. So while you all weren't adding gambling, we were busy adding every type of gambling you can imagine. But Virginia has, I guess you would say, caught up, if you want to put it that way. You can see, obviously, the big thing that's happened in the last couple of years is that Virginia did legalize sports betting and mobile gambling. And I imagine you all are going to be where we are with that. It's right now, video poker parlors are still our #1 type of gambling, but mobile gambling is gaining on it. I'd say by next year we'll be ahead. And Marisol, you know more about this than me. And in Virginia, it's what is the top type of gambling right now? Is it the mobile or Rosie's?
Right now, it's mobile. When sports betting became legalized, a lot of our calls have been with that. It used to be Rosie's till it became legal. And now we're getting calls about, the prospective casinos that are opening up.
Okay.
Can you give people a little bit more of a description of what a video poker parlor is? I'm not sure if people, if that's the same thing as like what we call the gray machines that are in convenience stores type thing, or is that different?
It's different, actually, and I only learned this when I was researching to do the presentation a few months ago. So our video poker parlors are, these are essentially poker machines or slot machines, and they have no skill at all. It is completely operated by a random number generator. And my understanding is that in Virginia, some of what you all have are called skill machines, which, although a lot of it, of course, is random, and that's what makes it gambling, there is some element of skill, and that's how it actually got passed. Is that your understanding, Marisol?
Yes. So from what people have been telling me, we have what Virginia has. They have the machines at the convenience stores, the gas stations, and where it's easily accessible. So you don't have that many machines, whereas in West Virginia, we actually have an actual room for it. I know, like with the fish tables, that was I had to Google fish tables because I couldn't wrap around what it looked like. So in West Virginia, ours are just usually like legal, casino type machines, whereas the skills machines, from what people explain to me, is that, it's just playing like a video game, like the kids do. So
there is a slight element of skill to it. And at this point, I think we have a few more. We have 1,200 of the parlors statewide, each with 5 to 10 machines. So slightly less there. Although I'm sure you all are going to be catching up on every level. Oops, there you go. I won't go into the whole history. This is probably a bit more than you all bargained on to know the whole history of gambling in Virginia. I will say one of the interesting things, if you learn about gambling history, is that you will see ebbs and flows through history. There will be times when governments are looking for extra money and they're really pushing gambling, and then there will be times, sort of a prohibition, where people are saying, gosh, we're seeing a lot of people getting addicted and we're seeing problems, and we're going to start cutting this back. And then all of a sudden, the money gets low and people start saying, hey, this is a great way to get some money without actually taxing people. So that's what you see kind of going state by state as well as nationally. Virginia is, of course, you all know, well known for horse racing. And we have horse racing here at 2 of our casinos. I will say, I don't, Marisol can chime in if it's different there. We actually get very few calls on our West Virginia line about actual live horse racing. And you all have the historical horse racing there, which of course I had to look up too, because I could not understand that. I'm like, wait, what? You mean the race has already happened? Can't someone just Google it as they're betting on it? And then it was explained to me that no, they don't give the actual names of the people or the horses that are competing. They give the statistics. So, there is some level of skill involved in that, but that's become popular in Virginia. The Rosies, which I assume you all have seen. Maybe some of you all have ever even been to a Rosie's. This is different than what we have in West Virginia. Those are, 2,700 machines at least, and this might be a little bit old, but those are available. And I think Marisol was saying second most common type of gambling call that you get. And it makes sense, just briefly, and this is something that we really emphasize a lot in prevention, especially when we're talking to, we do a lot of talks to youth. I'll say, so you know how it is when you're with your friends, you're sitting around and you're playing like Monopoly or Life all night on the board game, and your parents come in and say, hey, you've got to stop that. You've been doing that all night. And they're like, what? No, that's never happened. I'm like, oh, okay, but wait, sometimes are you on your computer or your video game or your iPad, and your parents are like, you've got to get off that and go to bed. Oh, yeah, that's every day. We have that argument. So I say, so you can understand how something that is digital, electronic, get your attention, can more easily get you addicted than something that is not. And so, again, when you look at things like, wire slot machines or historical horse racing or things on your phone more addicting than scratching off a physical lottery ticket or attending a live horse race, that's the big difference, and especially for young people are very in tune to that. And just, with the risk reward continuum, you're just going to so much more quickly be sucked into something if it's an electronic type of gambling. Here's my slide on skill machines. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. So those are, as I understand, still legal there. I don't think that's changed, right, Marisol?
No, there was the lawsuit that just they had a decision about it I think last week. So I know they stopped the machines there for a few months, but then some people sued that it was illegal for Virginia to do that. So, it was a relief to a lot of people when the machines were turned off, but when they were turned back on, we're starting to get calls again about that. So we don't know where that stands right now.
Yeah, they pushed they haven't made a decision on it, and they've delayed the decision till I think the end of next spring.
Yeah, that's correct, Ann. Yeah, from what I had read.
And as I mentioned the history of gambling, I'll just make a prediction here. Probably you're going to see those continue. It is pretty darn rare to see a revenue source like gambling come in and then so quickly cut off, unless there are a whole lot of social and financial problems that people are able to point to.
Right now, those are not being regulated, so they are not getting any funding, any funds from them. They're not regulated right now. They're considered grade machines.
Okay, but they're just not, they're allowing them to continue.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, just the only ones that are getting revenue from that are the manufacturers of the machines and the convenience stores themselves, but we don't get any taxes on them.
Yeah, okay. And that's similar to what happened here in West Virginia. And what you will see if they become, it was called the 3 R's, reduce, regulate. I can't remember the third R. The point was supposed to be when they became legal, state would get a bunch of money and they would be less visible and there would be less of them. I can tell you, in my opinion, the opposite happened, because once that happened, you started seeing them a lot. I mean, pretty much on every street corner here. A word on casinos. You all have, I think I had a slide, sorry, back here on this, that you already have some and you're planning more. And here is a map of where are what we're calling the competitive markets. Kind of interesting to note. You'll see a lot of casinos are located where? What is the thing that's constant? Near a border. What they used to tell us, what we used to hear, I'm sorry to say this, Virginia, was when we legalized a lot of gambling, money in, problems out. So problems meaning people going back to their home state. But as you can see, as more casinos are added, the problems are going to stay within the state. So you'll see more of that. Sports betting. If any of you have turned on a television or used a computer in the last few months, I would imagine you are just hit with a ton of these. We have so many billboards here, and there's a real consistent theme to the advertising with this. And this is really when you get into issues with especially with young people. It's risk-free and you get free money. So that's what the boards say. Now, that's not really how it works, right? And I will say, even talking to kids, they're pretty quick to pick up on this. They understand that, no such thing as a free lunch. So a lot of them are in, have had education on substance use, and they've heard the phrase, the first hit is always free. And so they understand what that means. I won't go into all the details on the types of gambling, and I've done that. Okay, new types of gambling. This is something, again, for young people to keep in mind, because these are some things you may not think of as gambling. This little picture here is Robinhood, of course. So you've probably all heard of the Robinhood app, which is an e-trading app that has no fees. So it's been a controversy in the gambling world for some time. Is stock market really gambling? Well, it depends. It's complicated. If you are just giving your financial manager access to your 401k and you're not, making those trades yourself and checking it every day, and it may not be gambling. That may be more of an investment. But when you're at the point that you are literally every day checking into an app and buying and selling, yes, it can very much act in your brain just like gambling. And this is something we see a lot of young people doing. It's actually fairly common in high schools to hear kids have their own apps like this. Sometimes their parents have helped them sign one, and that they are using these to gamble. Now, they're not financial wizards, right? They don't really know what they're doing, but you can imagine they make a little bit of money. They tell everybody they've made money, and then, their friends start doing it. So this can be a real issue with kids. And there's all kinds of other things here that I've listed: the cryptocurrencies, the NFTs, all that stuff that is especially attractive to young people. You've probably seen the news lately, giant crash in cryptocurrency. So there were a whole lot of people who were, betting on cryptocurrency, have now lost everything. That's definitely something attractive to young people. It's gambling in West Virginia. Again, I've already talked to you all a little bit about what we have and how many people may have a gambling addiction. I think this is kind of interesting. So this is some statistics I did with Virginia. I always think, rather than giving a percentage, sometimes I like to give the actual amount of people who may have a gambling problem. And I think that's, that is a very significant amount of people. And again, a lot of people still don't take it seriously. This is West Virginia and Virginia Helpline intakes. So what you'll notice here is, of course, that over time they've gotten, they've gotten, go back to that one, screen so I can see this better, that is generally increased. And I would anticipate that this trend is going to continue, especially as Virginia continues to expand gambling. Sorry, trying to move my screen. There we go. And here are the top types of gambling that we've gotten from both. Again, you can see the things that are more electronic are at the very top. And here where it says sports, almost all of those would be on people who are gambling on mobile, because that's just so much more accessible. caller information. So we collect all of this information, again, because you all are not in treatment. I would say that the thing that might be useful to you as prevention folks, in looking at this data, and this data is publicly available, you can see this information, is to understand a little bit about maybe the type of folks that you need to target and what's going on with that. Gender. So it's kind of interesting because we have, it's really, in West Virginia, it used to be that we had mostly female callers, and that was a little bit different than in other states. And now we are pretty much, we actually have more male callers. And I think Virginia has always been that way. A little bit that depends on the type of gambling that's available. You may see more females doing more slot machine or iGaming, mobile gaming on slots type of gambling, whereas you might see more males doing sports gambling. Age, the age is interesting because we used to get hardly any calls from young people, and as you can see, that has, this is Virginia, that has significantly increased. Gambling type, that's changed, of course, along with what has become legal. I'm sorry that I'm kind of speeding through some of these. The time that someone has become addicted, the time it takes someone to get addicted has changed a bit. That's been interesting. It's kind of easier to get, as I said, addicted to something that is quicker to access, electronic. So I think that's been the big difference. I'm not going to go over these stories because I don't have time. Services. So important for you to know, even though you are working in prevention, because you want to have a call to action for people who do become addicted, and to let them know what is available to them. So here are some things that in Virginia are currently offered. There's a 24/7 helpline, crisis counseling, which is important because gambling addiction has one of the highest rates of suicide of any type of addiction. Gamblers Anonymous, a free assessment, treatment. So there is free treatment available there now. Clinician-led wellness group, peer connection, self-exclusion. You can ban yourself from casinos and from software that can ban you from, stop your computer from being able to access gambling sites. Unfortunately, it's impossible to ban yourself from every type of gambling, but this works well for people who just have a very specific type. And then, just a whole lot of self-help information, recovery podcasts. I have podcasts in there twice for some reason, recovery apps, book recommendations. We give all that to people who call us from Virginia. This is something we do in West Virginia. It's a retreatment weekend. Maybe it'll be coming there. I don't know, but this has been real successful. A couple times a year we do this. We don't have inpatient in West Virginia. I know you all have at least one inpatient center there, but so this is kind of our answer to that, bringing people together a couple times a year. We also have recovery days where we are able to gather people who've battled gambling addiction, and they bring their loved ones and they get together for a day. This is a addiction, unlike, say alcohol or drugs, where it's pretty easy to meet someone who have had this disorder because it is even more stigmatized than alcohol and drugs. People don't talk about it. It's harder to meet people who've dealt with this. And so we do these events so that people are able to get together and meet other people who have dealt with this. Treatment. Yeah, we have treatment for loved ones here. I don't think you all have that yet, and maybe you will at some point. We get probably 20-30% of our calls from people who are pretty upset that their loved one has developed this addiction and maybe spent all of their money. And so we actually offer kind of marriage counseling or individual counseling to people who call us, or relationship counseling. Youth gambling. So this in itself is like a hour-long presentation. So I'll really speed through this, but and you all may know this working in prevention, but this has really been something that's gotten a lot of attention. Used to go to the conferences, National Conference on Problem Gambling, and there was no track on youth gambling. And now when you go, it's a very popular subject. Everybody's talking about this. when I say youth are more likely to develop a gambling problem than adults, most people don't believe me, I'll tell you that. But then I talk about some of our studies we've done here locally, which I'll share with you and show that indeed they are very much more likely. Everybody's kind of naive about odds, right? Gambling, it's hard to understand, but kids especially so. So studies have shown most kids are saying they are gambling. What kind of gambling are they doing? Well, they're not sneaking into a casino. For the most part, it's something that they're doing, playing poker with their friends or betting on personal challenges or betting on apps. A lot of times, as I said, their parents sign them in or they find a way to get in and people say, oh, no, there's, you're not allowed to gamble until you're 18 or 21. Right. Just like you're not allowed to drink and you're not allowed to access pornography. And we all know kids have never done any of that, right? So yes, certainly this happens with gambling. When I talk to schools and kids about gambling, I go over this, how are some ways that gambling and gaming are similar? Because this has been the connection. And I will tell you this, as far as getting in to talk to groups, especially parents, when you mention gaming, that is kind of your in, because they may not think their kids are gambling, but they think they're spending way too much time gaming. So we talk about how these are similar. And there's been a big convergence. I'm sure you all know about loot boxes and things like that are scattered throughout games that kids are using, which if any of you are not familiar, you're probably familiar with microtransactions where you pay, $1 or $2 to get an extra level or a costume or a character. Well, loot boxes are different in that you might pay a higher amount to get a chance to get one of those things. So an example is there's an NBA game where you might pay $10 and you get a pack of cards that may or may not contain the player that you want. So those are very, very common. The gambling platforms now look a lot more like games play. You go into a casino, you're not going to see like the old, one-armed bandit that looks kind of boring. They try to make them look a little bit more 3D, like what kids are playing. Non-cash transaction feels like you're not spending money. Very social, just like people go to casinos or with other people. Kids play this online with other kids, and both can cost a lot of money. Here's our survey that we did. We do this every year, and we have a survey. Last year we had 700 kids. You can see, as I said, most of them, if they are betting, it's something online. And we say, how often do you bet? I think what's interesting, good. I mean, obviously most are not addicted, but this kind of goes along with the statistics we see. You see a pretty significant amount of people, kids, 39 a few times a month and 18 every day. So it is a problem out there. Do you feel like friends or family have an addiction? I think it's kind of interesting when you ask this. You always see a more significant percentage that say yes, they see friends or family, versus it's usually only about 5% that they say they themselves might have a problem. So somebody's perceiving something differently. 128 of these kids did not think gambling can become an addiction. This is really where you come in, because my heavens, we've got to at least start there if they don't even think it can be an addiction. 21 admitting they've hid their gambling. That's a pretty top symptom if you're hiding your gambling. And 67 would like to stop but don't know how. Why do they do it? Most of it, this is very similar to what adults would say, for entertainment or fun. Best practices for prevention. And I think is this where you take over, Marisol? It is about, let me say one thing before I let Marisol take over. So on prevention in West Virginia, we've done a lot of different things over 20 years. I'll be honest, for the first probably 15 years, it was not a huge whole lot. It was more like an adjunct, like, well, the director of the program, while they're directing all the program, can also do some prevention on the side. And the big point I want to make to you all is that prevention is not a side activity. So that's why I'm so glad there's so many of you dedicated to this. It really takes more involvement. And we saw that early on. We tried, we used to say, well, we're going around to conferences and giving out information. And so can that just count as prevention? That's really not enough to do for prevention. You've got to really dedicate some folks and some money to that. And we at one point had folks at colleges. We would have, I think we would pay college kids to be sort of liaison on their campus.
It was like a stipend.
Like a stipend. There are a lot of issues with that. At that point, you're essentially managing almost employees who aren't really employees and may not have degrees, quite enough training. So I don't know that was a giant success. I'm not saying that couldn't be tried, but you've got to keep in mind just the idea again of you're basically will be managing employees who are college students. And so what we thought would be better, Maricel is going to talk about what we do as far as the grants that we have and how we access that. So Maricel, go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm going to jump in just real quick before I hand it off to Maricel. So in the process of coming to where we are now, and I hope there's not a delay, and I apologize if there is we tried a lot of different things. We partnered with many people in the community, but we found it just wasn't really getting us anywhere. And it was hard, we wanted to get into where, the kids in the schools. And as you all probably know, our schools have so much that they have to check off in a year, right? And so asking them to add one more thing that they had to talk about or do was not real invited. They didn't want to invite us in. So I had talked to one of our colleagues in Maryland, and he basically said, Jennifer, you've got to go in through the back door. And he gave us a lot of tips on how to do that and what he meant by that. And from that, we developed the program that we started, what was it, 18, 19, where we offered these mini grants. And they have grown and developed way beyond, I think, where we thought they would ever go. We have been lucky enough to have a person, Maricel, who enjoys doing the prevention work and has really put in a lot of time and effort to get it to where it is. In the beginning, even when we started the mini grants, we were still learning a lot. But she has it to a point now where we maintain those contacts and with our partners in the community. And I'm gonna, for short, because we're short on time, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to her. But building relationships is crucial. It's crucial.
Definitely. The other thing I should mention when we talk about prevention, we're talking about what we're doing in the community with kids, but there is a whole other level of prevention that you all as prevention professionals, I'm sure, are aware of, which is more of a primary level of prevention, which is maybe more on the legislative or policy level. That is probably a whole other presentation, but there are a lot of things that can be done. Just as an example, all of our lottery tickets in West Virginia are available at machines in convenience stores, the way cigarettes used to be sold. So that would be an example of something that may be done on a primary level. We have, we've done a lot of outreach through media with youth and with adults. So these are just some of the media messages we've had. But with that, I'm going to give it to Maricel for a few minutes. She's our expert.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name's Maricel Bernardo. I'm the program coordinator for the Problem Gambling Help Network of West Virginia, and I lead our prevention and outreach efforts. So what we've done, I've basically listed some of the things that we do. We do the social media presentations, BSAs, but one of the things we find that's most effective is partnership with other prevention organizations. One of the things that has been working great for us are our grantees. We maintain a relationship with them, and we have repeat grantees who apply every year, and we also add new ones, who to our program. So basically, what you would like to do is partner with organizations or persons who already have access to the schools, the elementary schools, the middle schools, and high schools. So the SAD groups, the Students Against Destructive Decisions, if you could reach out to them, that's already an in because they're already working with the schools. Talk to counselors, principals, coaches, teachers. One of our staff has an in with one of the high schools and through sports. So we were able to go and do presentations to students during Problem Gambling Awareness Month. You go to the schools, you talk about youth gambling, and you'd be surprised at, what these kids tell you. And you really have to do your homework because some of these kids are so smart that you don't think they know what they're talking about, but they do. So we also partner with collegiate organizations. We had one grantee who reached out to one organization, and they were also an athlete. So this is a way to get in and talk to other people. We partner with peer recovery support specialists, and when they're doing outreach, they're also promoting problem gambling. So reach out to social organizations, clubs, fraternities, sororities. If you just have like one contact who is willing to spread the word or the education, that's already a big in. And what I normally tell them is, I'm willing to come in and talk to your group if that's something that you're not comfortable doing. And we've done that. Either me or Sheila, we've gone out and talked to different organizations. I have people that say, hey, I'm having a women's club. Can you talk about this? So partnering with people who already have access to the population that you want to target is very, very important. And it cuts out a lot of paperwork for you, or, because you already have a foot in the door, which is what you're looking for. So partnership is very, very important. We partner with every organization that I can think of in the state. And, you maintain relationships, you develop these relationships, and you tell them that you're there to support them with whatever they need. Then you also, the second thing is social media. So here in West Virginia, with our grantees, Facebook is the main source. We've tried to get into TikTok, but we haven't been that successful. But Facebook has been one of the things that they've done. Again, presentations and workshops, that's another thing. We have some who go into schools, teach stack deck curriculum, because that's what we promote in West Virginia. We have one grantee who has an after school program, and that's where they talk to the kids. Now, one of the things that also work is participating in holiday events, community events, health and resource fairs. We've gotten calls where I've had a grantee say, I had someone come up to me at the Christmas parade and say, hey, I have a family member who really needs help. Or I've been to conferences where I've had people say, hey, Marisol, can I talk to you for a second? So, when you do tabletops, sometimes, these things can be boring or long-winded, but, if you just reach out to see if someone can reach out to you and say, hey, I know someone, or I need help. I've actually had to do an intake, talk to a college student when we were doing this at one of the colleges. So you never know who's going to approach you when you're doing these outreach. So one of the ways that we also, you have your giveaways. One of our grantees came up with ways where, people like to do the swag. They just pick up stuff. They don't really pick up the information. So they've come up with ways where they attach the swag with the information, so they don't have a choice but to read it. So that's one of the things that you might think of looking at. So these are examples of some of the things that you could do, the community events, the school events. So we also put out information. So put out literature everywhere, libraries, courthouse, health departments, anything that people might have access to. The churches, I've asked my church to put stuff, I've seen it in the bathrooms. The smaller cards like that are credit card types, those are a little bit easier because sometimes people don't want to admit that they have a gambling problem. So, things that they could basically palm. So those have been really popular with a lot of people, is that, oh, I can use this, but no one will know I have a problem. So food distributions have been really good for us. We partner with a lot of FRNs, and when they have food distributions or the food pantry, they put some of our stuff in there. So next slide, Sheila. So some of the sample activities that we have developed, or some of our grantees have developed, to show kids that there are other things out there besides being on their computer or playing a game, movie night. But you have to also get the parents involved and the adults, because if they don't understand, the problem, even though the child does, then it's not going to do anything. So we've had movie nights. For example, we had one group, they were showing the Minecraft movie, and there was a group of kids who did a pledge. Then they realized one of the kids never played Minecraft. So after the movie, a week later, they decided, oh, we're going to show him how to play Minecraft. And they realized that they had violated their pledge. So, so with kids realizing, oh, we're not supposed to be doing that, that really helps. Escape room, you could do PG themed escape rooms, students speaking with other students. This works a lot with the SAD groups, peer-to-peer is always very important. If kids think that they own it, then they can relate to other kids. Because as adults, we tend to tell the youth what we want, but unless they really understand and say, yeah, I get it, or they take ownership of it, then they don't get as excited as we do. We also do outdoor activities such as camping, hikes, walks, sports. They had disc golf, different things that kids can do to do anything. Then crafts, it's a way to disseminate information. We have grantees who create their own buttons with messaging. They do posters, handmade informational cards that some students did to promote the message, stickers. So these are just some of the things that we do. So, I could go on and on, but we don't have time. So I'm going to turn it back to Sheila.
Okay, real quick about that. When you have other groups that are creating things, I would kind of have a way to check those out, just to make sure that the messaging is appropriate. Sometimes people put messages on and mean well, but they tend to be filled with gambling related, what's the word, Sheila?
Yeah, paraphernalia or
Paraphernalia, pictures, thinking that would be fun. Like, Marisol, what was the one group? I think it was in
The buttons.
no, in Putnam County, they were going to do some kind of gambling related
Oh
activity.
yes, they were doing the similar to March Madness. So
Yes.
they were going to do an activity, but with our grantees, they understand that they have to run by everything. Anything that they do or produce, they need to run it by me so that we can approve or discuss other ways to do it. So when you're working with other groups, just make sure that there's a communication between the two, and you impress the importance of not using gambling or PG related, I guess, like
or
images or something.
or paraphernalia. Yeah.
Yes.
That's been a big kind of issue in the problem gambling world. I mean, it's one thing to have, you're trying to make a point and you're showing like a slot machine all busted up or something, but think of it this way. You wouldn't have like a addiction treatment center with 2 martini glasses chinking, right? Like, hey, that's cute. So there's a lot of cutesy stuff on gambling out there with cards, and a lot of people use that in a cutesy way, but it sends the wrong message. The other thing, just FYI, you're going to see this, a lot of parents don't see the problem with gambling, and there are a whole lot of casino nights hosted for proms and graduation nights, and that's a whole other method of attack you might look at. I was just in a store yesterday, a party store, and there was a whole section on here's how to have a casino themed party for your kids. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to be real quick because I know that we are, I want to save at least 5 minutes for questions. I have this question up here. What did Virginia do that we could not? You all passed a law about education in schools, and that is so big. I don't know how involved you all will be. I know it's mainly your Department of Education working with it. We are trying to get something like that done here, but that's fantastic because unlike drugs and alcohol, in most places, there is no formal education on gambling in schools. I'm not going to go over the treatment because I think you all don't specifically work in that area. I'm sure you're familiar with the Virginia Partnership for Gaming and Health, who we partnered with, and they actually helped us some with this PowerPoint. So I am not going to go over all of that. Let's see, what else do I need to say on that?
Sheila or Jennifer, or will these slides be available for people to?
Yes, we'll send you the link to this so you can certainly share that. Helpline modernization, just a note so that you're all aware that 1-800-GAMBLER is national now, and it's always important to have some sort of a call to action, in addition to responsible gaming and don't gamble before you're legally allowed to gamble and all that. It's important if you develop a problem to know where to call. And now you can say call 1-800-GAMBLER for help anywhere in the country. So we're very excited about that. And I know that they're working on a lot of things with the National Council on Problem Gambling, including making the number textable. And that'll be something great, especially for younger people. One thing I did want to mention, Marisol talked about social media, and we'd mentioned Facebook. I know that is kind of known as being more the media for older folks. We do tend to reach more parents that way. One thing to keep in mind, a lot of times people will say, oh, we're going to do a video or we're going to do a thing and we're going to put it on YouTube or put this picture on Instagram, or it doesn't really do any good to put anything on social media unless you have a way to spread it. And that usually means advertising and spending money. So unless you really get something to go viral, which is probably not going to happen, you've got to pay money to get that information out. She mentioned about TikTok. We can get an account on TikTok, but we were denied the ability to advertise just because they restrict who they allow to advertise. So that's a whole other thing I'm mad about. But we didn't get an account because we couldn't advertise. So there's no point in putting something on there if you can't find a way to spread it. So just keep that in mind, and maybe your folks would have more luck with that. But again, as Marisol said, make sure whatever goes out, whether it's a picture or a video, you vet it first, because you might be getting the wrong message coming across. Okay, recommendations. One of the things to keep in mind as you do prevention is that you may be reaching out to other community organizations and asking them to screen for problem gambling. You're probably familiar with the 2-question live bet screen. That's something that is a very easy way for people to at least open the door to getting people into getting help. But that's important, asking people to screen for that, because most people do not.
Sorry, real quick. And during March for National Problem Gambling Awareness Month, there is a screen that people do nationwide, a brief screen. What we did to get more people to take it is use a QR code. And we even have displays with the QR code on it that folks use when they are at events. And then you can, that data is shared or held nationwide. So that's something to look into. And if there are any questions, she has Marisol's name up here. She would be a great contact for you all and can go into further detail. And then if there's anything else that Sheila or myself can add, you guys are more than welcome to reach us. Ann has our contact numbers and emails.
All right. So I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to see all the chats. I see Jennifer was keeping track of them. Are there any questions that we missed answering through the chats?
Not
Well,
through
I had
the
a
chats,
couple
but, oh,
questions.
good, Frank, I was gonna say, unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yes, one question I was asking was, how is your outreach when it comes to addressing those people who are homeless? Have you ever looked at that component as well?
We actually have one counselor who is really active in homeless organizations, and she has done some outreach with them. We've done some locally. We've gone to our local homeless shelters and we've given out, backpacks with our phone number, literature, given talks. A lot of times the shelters are required to have groups for certain people. So we've done that. Our counselor that I mentioned in the Northern Panhandle attends they do what they call like camping out for the homeless type nights. And she often has an exhibit there with our information. It can be a hard population to reach, certainly for those who are unhoused, who are not in a shelter. That is a real challenge. And we know that homelessness is an issue among folks who gamble. So we've had more luck getting to them if they are in a shelter, certainly. It's a great question.
And the other thing I'll add is something that we are starting now is we are partnering with American Jobs Center, and I'm not sure if you guys have those in Virginia. These are new to me, but our company, First Choice Services, has rented office space, and it's basically a walk-in center where local organizations, and if you guys know about these and I'm misspeaking, please don't hesitate to correct me. So it's a walk-in center. And for instance, the one here in Charleston, West Virginia, there's going to be like Workforce West Virginia will be there to help people, get linked to jobs or to training. We will be there. We have over 16 helplines for not just gambling, but insurance navigation, substance use, treatment. What else, guys? 211. We do the whole gamut. And so we have developed a screen. So if somebody comes into this walk-in center and where it is located, it is close to the transient population and to one of our homeless shelters in the city. And so we will do a screen and then we will connect them to whichever one of our helplines can help them the best. And we will have someone there every day, Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And so if you guys have something like that in your area, that is also I think it's going to be a great way to reach that population for people just looking for services, because we have a lot of contacts in the community. We send information to folks. We go out and speak to folks for all of our helplines. And we have outreach coordinators in the company that talk about all of the helplines, even if it's not gambling specific. And so we do reach a lot of people. We have contact with like our city that has the outreach people that go out to where the homeless camps are. And so they are aware of our services. But I think this addition is going to be great because you're going to have people just walking right in the door, just looking for help. And again, it goes back to those partnerships. It goes back to getting the word out, having some solid outreach materials, and just getting out there and making those partnerships.
Can I also ask another question if I may? Because you touched on two things that I was curious about. One is the military, the type of outreach materials you have. How did you create? What did you use to create the type of outreach materials you have? That's one of the things. I'm trying to identify ways which I can get the kind of materials I need to get to my community. And the second question I have is, we have here in Portsmouth, we have a strong military presence here. And I would like to start some kind of outreach with our military community as well too. And have you done anything along the lines of that as well?
We have, and Sheila would be a great contact to talk about the outreach material. She is our director of marketing and communication. So she contact Sheila. Do you want to give them your email in the chat?
Sure will.
Okay. And then as far as the military population, we don't have a really large population here, but we have, again, worked with veterans associations. One of our clinical consultant outside of our agency is Dr. Heather Chapman, who runs the the gambling program in Cleveland, Ohio. And so we offer a lot of trainings. We partner. Sheila, you can talk more about the partnership with the Veterans Administration that we have developed the last couple of years as well. Again, going to those places, presenting, setting up tables at their events. But Sheila, you can talk a little bit about the partnership with the VA.
We work with the Governor's Challenge to prevent suicide among veterans. And one of the things that we do is offer CEU trainings for social workers. So we've done those the last couple of years, had 300 plus social workers on each meeting. And these are people who work directly with veterans. And during that, we talk about the connection with gambling addiction. Certainly, that's the best way to reach people if you're able to offer CEUs to people. A lot of the folks may be working with veterans and not aware of what an issue that gambling is, just providing that education.
And Frank, I will say that I know Carolyn Holly in Virginia has worked with some of the different, I can't even think of the word right now, but what's the big and I should know this.
We have the shipyard, and we also have NOB, the Naval Station Base.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know she has done some work and some presentation with that population as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just being cognizant of the time, it's 12:03.
Yes.
Yes.
And I wanted to thank everybody for attending and thank the speakers. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free. Sheila gave her contact in the chat, and everybody has my contact. I can forward your questions as well. But thanks everybody for attending. Thank you, Jennifer, Sheila, and Maricel for presenting. It's much appreciated. And if people have further questions, feel free to give us a holler. And thank you,
And
everybody.
one last thing,